Arguably the best structure deck ever made. If you can manage to get your hands on 3 copies of the Dino Masters Fury structure deck, I'm confident in saying that you could build probably one of the best competitive budget decks ever created for about $30. What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. Now, today I'm bringing to you the competitive $30 Dinosaur deck with Dino Smashers Fury just getting released. This is, in my opinion, the best structure deck we've ever had. It has a really amazing just synergy about it that if you just buy 3 structure decks, that you can actually play a competitively viable deck, even in a crazy meta like we have right now with Zodiacs, Infernoids, and Paleozoic running rampant. And I think that's so cool. It kind of reminds me of the Monarch days a little bit, but at the same time, that the fact that we get cards like Twin Twister and Quaking Mirror Force really take it over the top because these decks are usually lacking staple cards like that. But the fact that we got the reprints and the fact that this deck is finally here, I couldn't be more excited. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and slide on over here and we are going to get into the deck profiles. So I want you to keep in mind that this build is comprised solely of cards only available in the Dino Masters Fury structure deck. So you could take this, bring it to your locals, you could probably do relatively well. Don't expect to just blow everything out because obviously there are some cards here and we're limited on some card choices, so there's some that are better than others. But overall, this is a very solid deck just with 3 structure decks, and then you can make some slight adjustments and upgrades depending on your budget. But for 30 bucks at your local game store, this is pretty fucking good. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So starting off, we have 3 copies of Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. This should be obvious because it is the boss monster of the deck. This is kind of where all of our firepower is coming from. 3,500 attack. You summon it like you would BLS. You banish 2 dinosaur monsters from your graveyard. Once per turn, you can pop a dinosaur monster on your field to flip all of your opponent's monsters into face down defense position. Then this card can attack all of them once each, and if it attacks a defense position monster, you deal 1,000 damage to them and then send that card to the graveyard. So this card has the potential to be a massive blowout. You can just drop multiple in a single turn if you really wanted to. The fact that it can still be special summoned after it's first been special summoned, again, very similar to BLS, is very important, and it's going to come up later for another card that we play in the deck as well. Now, moving on from there, we're playing 3 copies of Megalo Smasher X. Now, this is just a vanilla, but it's a damn good vanilla. 2,000 attack, 0 defense. It's a dinosaur, so it has synergy. It also has water attributing as well, so if you have the budget to buy a copy of Bahamut Shark, overlay 2 of these for a Bahamut Shark, and get your totally awesome out on the board, and you're just in for a treat, especially with cards like Rescue Rabbit in here as well. That's really good, but this is mainly just for the Rescue Rabbit play, but there's some really cool things you can do with this later on as well. Now, moving on, 3 copies of Soul Eating Oviraptor. This should come as no surprise because this card is absolutely phenomenal. So it's a level 4, 1,800 attack dinosaur. If it's normal or special summon, you can take a dinosaur type monster from your deck, either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. Now that's insane because that means you can actually search Ultimate Conductor Tyranno with this card because it doesn't have a level restriction or anything like that, so that's just absolutely nuts. And then on top of that, you can destroy one other level 4 or lower dinosaur on the field and then special summon one from the graveyard in defense position. So it has almost like a pseudo Coach Soldier Wolfbark effect as well, so that's just absolutely nuts. And you can only use each once per turn, but quite frankly, if you can search this off of this, you're probably going to be blowing out your opponent anyway. Now, next up is 3 copies of Miscellaneousaurus. Now, this is another really good powerhouse card. Level 4, 1,800 attack. I love the strength that these cards have. Like, they have such high attack values. Now, Miscellaneousaurus is cool because it has an ability, it acts as a hand trap where you can discard it during the main phase, and during that period, no activated effects are going to affect your dinosaur monsters. So anything that would activate is just pretty much going to be nullified. So that's a lot of ignition and possibly quick effects as well. Anything that's activated, as long as it's not a continuous effect, it's going to be just completely nullified, and that's great. And then it has almost like a fairy tale snow-like effect, where when it's in the graveyard, you can banish any number of dinosaurs, including itself, and then special summon a dinosaur monster from your deck that has the same level equal to the number of cards that you banish. So that's going to go in tandem with our 2 copies of Tyranno Infinity, because just by banishing 4 dinosaurs, Tyranno Infinity is now a 4,000 attack monster, and that's just on the first one. If you happen to do this again with Miscellaneousaurus, now you're looking at an 8k attack Tyranno Infinity. Now, Miscellaneousaurus does destroy the monster in the end phase, but the whole purpose of Tyranno Infinity is more of like a game ender if Ultimate Conductor Tyranno isn't already doing it for you. Conductor Tyranno can basically wipe the board clean. You're just going to bring out Tyranno Infinity and just swing for a huge amount of damage. So I like having the 2 in here. The traditional dinosaur decks that you're going to see later on with the True Kings and things like that usually just play 1, again, just kind of as a closer. But because our options are limited in our card choices, I did want to play 2 because at the very least, if you banish 2 dinosaurs off of an Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, that's still 2,000 attack on a normal summon, and that's pretty good. But even 1 Miscellaneousaurus on 4k, I'm not going to complain about a 4k normal summonable beat stick, because that's just fantastic. Now moving on, we have 3 copies of Baby Cerosaurus, and then we have 2 copies of Petite Pteranodon. I could have completely butchered the name on there, but the ratio for this is actually intentional. Both of them serve the same purpose in this deck. When they're destroyed by a card effect, you can special summon either a level 4 or lower or higher, depending on which card. Level 4 or lower applies to Baby Cerosaurus. Level 4 or higher applies to the Petite Pteranodon. Now, the reason why this is here, and the reason this ratio is like this, Petite Pteranodon, again, I'm going to butcher that name, doesn't allow you to attack the turn the monster is summoned. So, whereas Baby Cerosaurus doesn't have that stipulation, and the only monster that we're playing that is level 4 or above a level 4, rather, is the Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, which can't be special summoned off of this card anyway. So it makes more sense to play 3 copies of the Baby Cerosaurus. True King decks maximize these baby dinosaurs because they have things like Lithogasm and all these other more common triggers like Dragonic Diagram as well to trigger these in a lot easier ways. But the deck, fresh out of the structure deck, doesn't have a lot of ways to trigger these out of the hand. So this is a really good way to kind of just maybe make some space for other cards in the deck, because since they're not as easy to be triggered, we don't want to see them as much, but they're still very strong because they can be triggered out of the deck with cards like Oviraptor and all these other cards as well. And then last but not least, we have the 1 Rescue Rabbit, because we are playing the Megalo Smasher X, and that basically makes 1 Rescue Rabbit a 4,000 attack, just 2 bodies that you can just do with 1 card, and that's really good, and there's a really cool thing you can do with Rescue Rabbit with this deck as well. So that's it for the monsters. It's around like 20 or so, I believe. I don't remember the exact number, but next up, we're going to get into the spells, and this is where things get really interesting. So we got 3 copies of Lost World. Now this is a hell of a field spell. Lost World's effect is all monsters that are not dinosaur type lose 500 attack and defense, which is basically the only thing that affects our deck is Rescue Rabbit, which is not going to matter anyway. And then once per turn, when a dinosaur type monster is normal or special summoned, your opponent is going to get a Jurak Egg token. Now this is optional, you don't have to give them to it, it's not mandatory, but as long as your opponent has this egg token on their field, any targeting effect must target this egg token, and that is fucking huge. And the reason that's so important is because think about this meta where we have cards like Book of Moon, Trident, Forbidden Chalice, Compulsory Evacuation Device, basically all the good Paleozoics, they're all targeting effects, and while this is on their field, they all have to target this specific card. So that means that your dinosaurs are going to be protected by a myriad of different cards, and you're going to be able to go through with your plays much easier. And then last but not least, while your opponent has the token, once per turn, if a normal monster were to be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can destroy that many dinosaur type monsters from your deck instead. Now this is where I really want to emphasize a couple interesting things here. So let's say, for example, you just have any monster. Like, let's just say we have, I don't know, let's just say Megalo Smasher, just because it's a vanilla. Now the thing is, the Jurak Egg token is considered a normal monster. So what you can do is, you can swing into the Jurak Egg token, trigger Lost World to protect the normal monster, and instead, you can destroy a monster out of your deck instead. Oh, I don't know, maybe Baby Sarasaurus. Trigger the Baby Sarasaurus, summon something like Soul-Eating Oviraptor, which can trigger, and then add you your ultimate Conductor Tyranno to your hand. Now that's really good, but it gets even better than that. So let me take a step back here. Now let's look at a card like Rescue Rabbit. Rescue Rabbit reads, when you summon the 2 monsters off of its effect, let's just get out the 2 Megalo Smashers here just for visual aid. When you summon the 2, they're destroyed in the end phase. Now what's crazy about this is Lost World can protect the Megalo Smashers. You can send 2 of your baby dinosaur monsters to the graveyard and summon 2 more dinosaur monsters on top of that, ending with a board of 4 dinosaurs off of 1 Rescue Rabbit. That is absolutely crazy. I can't believe the card works that way, but I'm fairly certain it does. So to me, that's just absolutely nutty. So we definitely want to maximize our ability to get to Lost World as quickly as we can, solely for the reason that I just showcased there. Now, to do that, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Terraforming to search it. It's okay if we draw multiples because we've got cards like Twin Twister and stuff to pitch the extra copies. You can also just set them as bluffs. 3 copies of Fossil Dig because it searches everything in our deck except for Ultimate Conductor, Tyranno, and Rescue Rabbit, which doesn't even matter because the fact you can tutor your whole deck is really good. It's also not once per turn, which is something to note as well. Now we have 3 copies of Swords of Concealing Light. Now the reason these are in here is because this deck suffers from a lack of spot removal. There's no Raigeki, there's no Dark Hole in this structure deck, so if your opponent already has an established board of cards like Trident or Floodgate monsters or things like that, we don't really have a way to out them because of the lack of spot removal. Swords of Concealing Light kind of fills the role here because it's going to either force the activation of our opponent's cards, and if not, everything's going to be flipped face down, meaning we can then proceed on with our plays. And what's also cool is that it doubles as synergy for the Ultimate Conductor Tyranno as well, because everything will be flipped face down. You drop this bad boy, you clear all their monsters, and do a significant amount of damage to their life points. So the synergy's there, and I definitely feel like this is a very strong card to have in the main deck, because we really need to have some sort of way to, I guess, pseudo-remove our opponent's monsters. Next up is 3 copies of Twin Twister. This should be expected because, I mean, it's Twin Twister, and this deck, you know, while it's not susceptible to cards like Dimensional Barrier, Solemn Strike, Solemn Warning, and other, you know, battle traps and stuff probably hurt this deck very much, and we want to make sure that we're clearing the way for our dinosaurs to do what they do best. So that's going to do it for the spells. It's a pretty heavy spell lineup, around 15 or so. And last but not least, the traps. So 3 copies of Quaking Mirror Force. This card is just amazing. Again, synergy with Ultimate Conductor, Tyranno, with everything being flipped face down. It also buys us time if we need it. If our opponent just happens to run into it, we can flip everything face down. They can't flip it up, and it buys us a couple turns to possibly regain some resources and take control of the board. Next, we have 1 copy of Survival's End. I'm not a big fan of this card because I feel like it's very situational. While you can destroy the Jurak Egg tokens with this card, that's kind of significant. I don't really see like this card coming up too much. Your opponent might have a couple egg tokens. You can destroy them all with this card. Special summon dinosaurs, but they're going to be destroyed in the end phase. So again, this is like another finisher card in my opinion, but if you need to use it in like the early or mid game, it has the effect where you can pop a dinosaur and pop a card your opponent controls as well by banishing it from the graveyard. So that's pretty cool, I guess, but I'm not really the biggest fan of it, but I feel like it's an okay one of. And last but not least, I have Fossil Excavation as a nice tech. Now, Fossil Excavation is basically just a shittier Call the Haunted. You have to discard a card, target a dinosaur, and then you resurrect it. If either one of the cards is destroyed, it destroys the other, basically exactly like Call the Haunted. So that's really unfortunate, but what's really good about this is that it brings back Ultimate Conductor Tyranno because there's no clause saying it can't be special summoned by other ways. So being able to resurrect a 3,500 attack monster at the cost of a -1, in my opinion, is really fucking good. And then on top of that, if you don't want to go that route with the Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, you can also use it to pop the babies, because if they are to destroy this fossil excavation, it's going to destroy the baby, which then the baby's destroyed by a card effect, which means you can special summon another dinosaur off of that effect. So that's pretty cool too. I like the synergy there. The cost isn't, anything outrageous, and I feel like for this 40 card deck, that's just the perfect card it needs to round everything out. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. I really hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile. It's a really, really fun deck, and obviously you can play your cards like your Logias, your Dolkas, your Totally Awesomes for the Megalo Smashers, your True Kings. Any cards you guys have to upgrade this deck to a much better form is obviously welcome, but this is for the player that doesn't really have a whole lot of money to spend, that wants to play a really, really powerful deck for only around 30 bucks, and I think this deck really gives some players the opportunity to do that. So guys, again, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and also be sure to back me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.